Hey there, welcome back to another video. This time it is a review of the 2020 action sequel, Bad Boys for Life. Now, Bad Boys for Life is the third film in the Bad Boys franchise, and it is also a sequel that was 17 years in the making. That's a long time. That's almost 2 decades since the last film in the franchise. And unlike most of these long gestating sequels, this is actually pretty good. It was one of those sequels where it actually wound up being worth the wait and wasn't a total misfire or a disaster. And that's honestly quite surprising considering how long it's been since the second film. Also, considering how many different moving parts there are in terms of the production, in terms of the director, and so on and so forth. Michael Bay was the director for the first two. He did not come back to direct this. Instead, Bad Boys for Life was directed by a couple newcomers in Adil and Bilall, uh, who had, I think they'd had a little bit of experience before this, but nothing of this particular caliber. And I gotta be honest, I thought they did a really great job. I thought they captured Bay's sense of style and flair, and I felt they put their own little spin on it. I was honestly quite impressed with the direction from these two guys, and I am looking forward to what they're going to bring to Beverly Hills Cop 4 because they are rumored to be attached to that particular project. So, I mean, they played a huge part in resurrecting this long, supposedly dead franchise. Uh, Hopefully, they can do the same with Beverly Hills Cop 4. They definitely know their way around the camera. They know how to shoot sequences in terms of making them pop visually. And even though this film isn't as action packed as I would have liked it to have been, they still shot the action sequences that were in the film quite well. Used the slow mo in a way that actually enhanced the action, didn't detract from it, wasn't distracting, uh, wasn't an example of just showing off with zero substance. So yeah, I can't really say enough good things about these two guys. I think they did a great job directing this film. The screenplay by Chris Bremer, Peter Craig, and Joe Carnahan. This script, in a lot of ways, is Expendables 3 done the right way. And I know I'm not the only one that has made that observation, but it's the best observation to make. It's the best comparison because Expendables 3 had a lot of the old meets the new in its plot. And in Bad Boys for Life, you have that too. You have a new team of cops, and they have new methods of solving crimes and taking care of potential threats that are a lot different than Mike and Marcus's old way. But unlike the Expendables 3, which did way too much to prop up the new Expendables as being better than the old guys, to the point where they're honestly kind of insulting and degrading the old guys, it doesn't do that. There's an opportunity for the film to have a moment like that where the new crew is trying to do the Bad Boy song, but then Mike and Marcus come in and is like, "Don't do that, like, don't ever do that again." And I'm like, "Hey, I love that," because the writers knew we don't need that. That's not what audiences want. That's not what fans of this franchise want to see. They don't want to see a bunch of new people upstage Mike and Marcus, and that didn't happen. Mike and Marcus were center stage, even in the climax, although the new people were there to help out and give them extra firepower. They never really dominated the screen time, let alone were they the ones that were doing most of the damage. But there were some of the new crew who managed to hold their own, and I felt that they helped add an extra flavor, an extra bit of uniqueness to the film, as well as to the dynamic between Mike and Marcus. And it was I like how they wrote the new crew. I think the writers did a really good job with that. I also feel that the way that they introduced the villain is really impressive. It's brutal. It's intense. It's insane. It's bloody, and it's a great way to introduce your villain. And I also like the fact that the villain in this is, you know, is really it's like a witch. It's like a Mexican witch. And I thought that was interesting, like that, like a sorceress or something. But like she doesn't really have magic powers, but she's into the occult nonetheless, and she's really ruthless. And I like the fact that it was a female villain, especially for this franchise. That's a very unique thing, because there really hasn't been female villains in this franchise until this film, and rarely do you see that very often in these kind of movies anyway, where you have the main villain is a woman, and it's a tough, ruthless woman who's like cutting people up with knives and shit. Um, I liked that character choice, and I like the decision to have um, Isabella Reyes, played by Kate Del Castillo, as the main villain for the film. And I didn't mind the other bad guy too, and Armando, who's her son, played by Jacob Scipio. I didn't mind Armando, because Armando definitely reminded me in a lot of ways of Jason Statham's character in the Fast and Furious franchise, mixed in with a little bit of the Winter Soldier, and I think that was intentional. You could tell that these writers were trying; they were taking elements that worked from the Fast and the Furious sequels, as well as Marvel, and tying that into this franchise. And I still don't know how I feel about the ultimate fate for Armando, but depending on what they do with it and how they handle it, I don't necessarily hate it. It's just one of those things where it just really hinges upon how they're going to handle it, if there's going to be another one, which I think there will be, since this was a legitimately big film. I mean, it cost $90 million and it made $391.6 million in the box office already, and so it definitely made a profit and was a profitable film for the studio, and and for this franchise. So yeah, and I also like the fact that the plot is not another drug smuggling or money smuggling. It's not another drug dealing plot. It's a straightforward revenge plot line, and the different sort of twists and turns that are revealed really reveal some new things about the characters, which in one way some people could look at that and be like, oh, it just pulled it out of their ass, and where was any of this in the previous films. But I can deal with it, and I actually like it, because it just adds something new. It adds something fresh to this film and to this franchise. And to me, that's a necessary thing to do with a sequel that's happening 17 years later. So I think it's a necessary thing to do to try to do as best as you can to add some unique new flavors and ingredients to the franchise. And I definitely feel the screenplay does that. Uh, just a little spoiler alert here. I don't necessarily feel that the character of Captain uh, Conrad Howard, played by Joe Pantoliano, who was great once again as a police captain, but I don't really agree with the fact that he got killed off. I don't think that was necessary. That really felt like a total cliche, and I understand why it was there. So Mike and Marcus would have a reason to get together one last time for one last ride, and I get it. I get it. I understand. But it just felt unnecessary, and I didn't like seeing him die, and I wish they could have figured something else out. It was shocking. I thought the way that the film handled it, I didn't necessarily see it coming when it happened, so I got to give it credit for that. And the film definitely did not shy away from the brutality of his death. He gets a really bloody, realistic death scene, but it still didn't change the fact that I liked that character and just didn't really feel that he needed to die. I mean, why do we have to kill the captain off? It just seems like it's a requirement for a lot of these police franchises, these franchises with police officers. You got to kill the captain off at one point in time, or the police chief. It's just I didn't really feel that was needed. You could have found some other motivation for the two to get together. But yeah. Other than that, I mean, like I said, I like the overall plot. I like the different twists and turns. The humor is still as funny as ever. Uh, Marcus still can't remember the words for the Bad Boy song, which that I didn't mention that in a previous review of Bad Boys 2, but that's a bit that's always cracked me up because it's so true. Like I don't know the words to that song. All I know is bad boys, what you gonna do? What you gonna do when they come for you? I just bet I'm near done it day. Like really, like that's I don't know the words. So so and I know I'm not the only one. It's a very relatable joke, or maybe it's not really a joke. It's just a funny observation, really, about the song. But I also want to, in terms of spoilers, I also want to mention in terms of the screenplay how effective the moment is when Marcus watches Mike get gunned down. When Mike gets gunned down, like that was genuinely surprising. I didn't see that happening. I didn't see that coming, and I really did feel that that added even more intensity and impact to this overall story because it showed vulnerability. It showed that bulletproof Mike, he's not bulletproof, and I like that. I like that they had that moment where he did have a life-threatening situation where he was gunned down and he was helpless and he wasn't tough and he wasn't unstoppable and he wasn't a superhero. He was vulnerable, and and that's something that I really liked because you don't see that a lot in these type of over-the-top action movie franchises. You don't see moments where your hero is vulnerable, unless we're talking about Die Hard. I mean, the first film especially is one of the ultimate examples of your action hero being vulnerable and showing weakness and so on and so forth. So, yeah, I like that touch too. So, yeah, ultimately, I really enjoyed this screenplay. Um, I felt in a lot of ways it was better than the script for the first film, but where this person, where see, this is one of those movies where I did enjoy it quite a bit, and I really did have a blast with it, but I just feel that it was missing something, and I think the biggest thing that this film is missing for me that prevents it from being on the same level as the second film and really just puts it around the same level as the first film for me is a lack of consistently exciting and thrilling action sequences, which is one of the problems that I have with the first film. It just feels like there isn't a lot of action in this, especially with Mike and Marcus, because a good chunk of it is Marcus retiring and all that, and Mike is recovering from his injuries, so there isn't really a whole lot of action in those moments. And then when the action is there, it's well shot and it's well done. I don't mind some of the shootouts in the climax. The sequence on the bike I liked, but I felt like there was something missing with that. I could have sworn that in the trailer there was more to it. For some reason, in the final cut, that's not there. I know in the trailer there's a scene where they're Mike and Marcus are in a car and they're in a car chase and they're chasing some guy through the mall, and that's where you have a scene where Martin Lawrence, puts out the badge, but it's okay, we're police officers and we're cops, and I felt that the scene in the trailer was better. The movie opens up with them on the beach, so there's a car chase on the beach instead of in the mall. So I felt the one in the trailer was better. I thought it was more exciting and more interesting visually than them in a chase on the beach. But that's just me personally. But yeah, it just felt like there wasn't enough action. Like the best shootout that I remember, like there's a little bits near the end, but the best shootout for me was the one in the car shop, and that one had some really good bits of slow mo where Mike's diving and shooting people, and I like that sequence. I thought that was well done, and there's some nice shotgun fun in the climax. There are moments where the new crew really gets to shine. In particular, the buff tech guy, who I really think kicked a whole lot of ass in the final sequence. Um, so yeah, it's just one of those things where it just felt like the action could have been amped up a lot more. But it's still a really strong film when it comes to the humor, when it comes to the dynamics between the characters. Um, once again, it's got a really solid cast. Will Smith, Martin Lawrence, they're great as always as Mike and Marcus. They still have that excellent chemistry. They still have that wonderful repertoire, that just back and forth that's just so enjoyable and fun to watch. And it was just great to see them again. And it was also really great to see the two recapturing that genuine charisma and that genuine chemistry after all these years. That's not easy to do. I mean, for instance, take a look at something like Dumb and Dumber 2. That was a sequel that happened many, many years later, and you had the original cast, you had Jim Carrey and Jeff Daniels, and they couldn't recapture that chemistry. They couldn't recapture that magic. It had been too long. And that's not the case here, which is something that I legitimately really like to see. I like to see sequels if they're gonna do one that's this late in the game. I really like to see the main characters, the people that we pay to see, really shine like they should. And Bad Boys for Life, the bad boys shine. The bad boys are badasses again, and the bad boys have some really fun back and forth and banter, and that's exactly how it should be. The other cast members are fine. Vanessa Hudgens surprised me as Kelly. I mean, this is the High School Musical girl. This is and I thought she did a good job. I honestly didn't recognize her at first. That's how good of a job I felt she did as that character. Alexander Ludwig was good too. Charles Melton as Rafe. I really liked this actress. Yeah, Rita. The actress who plays Rita. Paola Núñez, who plays Rita Cicada, the head of Ammo and Mike's ex-girlfriend. I thought she was not only gorgeous, but I felt she did a good job in terms of being a strong character and believably kicking some ass, and then at the same time uh, having some genuine chemistry in terms of sexual chemistry with Will Smith, with Mike. You really did buy that they had some sort of relationship with one another, and there is some passion there. And I honestly felt this is a stronger relationship than the one in the second film. That's one thing I didn't really mention in my review of the second movie, but now that I think about it, it's something that I also feel that I'm not too big on, is the whole romance with Will and Gabrielle Union. Like they're okay, but I didn't really buy the chemistry between the two. It just doesn't really seem genuine. Uh, that's not the case here. I really think that Will and Rita definitely have some. I mean, Paola probably butchered her name, but I think Will and Paola, they have some genuine sparks here. Uh, Jacob Scipio. Once again, I'm butchering these names. I'm not Hispanic. I'm not Spanish. I'm not from Mexico. I don't know how to say it. I don't know how to pronounce it. Um, let's just call him Jacob. Jacob, when it comes to the physical stuff, he's fine. Kind of reminds me of a UFC fighter. But when it comes to like having an on-screen presence that you can really be drawn into or that really resonates, he doesn't really have that. But thankfully, he's not the main focus. It's it's Isabel, played by Kate Del Castillo. So Kate Del Castillo reminded me a lot of like Rachel Tickleton, or not really Rachel Tickleton. What is she was in a film. She was in The Rookie. I'm trying to remember her name. I'm gonna look it up. For some reason, when I type The Rookie, I get this stupid TV show. I don't care about The Rookie TV show. It's not what I'm trying to find here. Um, Forgive me, folks. It's live. Sonia Braga. She really does. She gives me Sonia Braga vibes, and that's not a bad thing at all. Sonia Braga she's a good actress, and she did a really good job in roles like in The Rookie. So that's not a bad thing, and it's nice. I just thought she was just really intense, and I loved it. I loved her performance, and I really liked the character. The rest of the cast is fine too. I mean, you have Michael Bay, who has a cameo. DJ Khaled is in a scene. Uh, of course, Theresa Randle and Joe Pantoliano, they also have appearances and do wonderful jobs with what they're given to work with. And I would say there are definitely some other things about this film that I like too. For instance, the score by Lauren Balfe, or Balfe. I really like this score. In fact, the this score to me was better than the score for the second film. And it's one of the better scores that I've heard from this year so far. I felt that its own individual, unique, or fairly original pieces, I felt that those stood on their own and were solid. But what really stood out the most to me with this score is any time that Lauren would remix Mark Mancina's epic music from the first film into the soundtrack for this, and it just makes this movie even better, and it just reminds me even more of what Bad Boys 2 was missing in that regard. So yeah, it was just great to hear that Mark Mancina's epic theme once again, because it really is something to me that is as integral to the franchise and to Bad Boys as any other iconic theme is for any other franchise. Um, so it was definitely something that really brought a smile to my face, and was definitely something that pleased my eardrums, so to speak, to hear that score once again. The cinematography by Robrecht Havart, I thought was absolutely gorgeous. Just got the beauty out of Miami and all these other locations. Uh, I felt that even in sequences that weren't outside in the elements, I felt that they were also really well shot and really well done, like the sequences in the nightclub and so on and so forth. The editing by Dan Leventhal and Peter McNulty or Nolte, uh, I thought it was excellent. It was a well edited film. Although there are some moments where things are a little bit choppy, but I think that's because stuff was cut. I don't really think that's really the editor's problem. I think it's something where some things were cut out of the film, and so it's kind of hard to uh, make the sequence flow as well as they would like because they have to do cuts. And when that happens, sometimes you get some sort of jarring sort of things here and there. But there wasn't a lot of that. There wasn't a lot of those moments in this film. I would say some of the CGI near the end was a bit wonky, especially the fire. They still haven't figured that out. They still haven't figured out how to make CGI fire look real. I've yet to see CGI fire in anything look like the real deal. And I understand why they don't do that because it's for safety reasons and it's they don't want to deal with fire and I get it. I understand that, but there were a lot of people who spent years working with fire and had perfected ways to do it safely. Look at the film Backdraft. That movie is done for real with fire and there's no CGI and nobody got hurt. I mean, there were some instances where some people were close, but there were a lot of that nobody got seriously hurt or burned or anything like that. If you have professionals, you have people know what they're doing, the risks are going to be very minimal and the rewards are going to be great because your action sequences are going to have so much more impact and power because you got real fire. For instance, that climax, if it was a real helicopter that crashed, if it was actually there was actual real fire going on in the mansion and they're shooting people in who are actually on fire or there's fire around them, it'd be a much more effective sequence. But as it is, it just feels like a video game at times because there's so much CGI. And it takes you out of it. It takes you out of things. If there's one thing that Michael Bay definitely knew what to do and definitely knew how to do was direct and shoot action sequences with real explosions and real fire and real stunts. And this still has moments like that. I mean, there's some really awesome stunt work in the climax. The buff tech guy doing all of his stuff, spearing people through pillars and stuff. Like, that's some really cool looking stunt work. So there are moments like that in the film, and there's some nice bits, shootouts, and some nice stuff like that. But there are other moments where you can tell it's not real. It's CGI, and you also have stunts that aren't real people. So that, I mean, like, for instance, the main villain falling in slow mo into a green screen. It just doesn't really have the same impact as if she actually fell. I mean, I'm not going to say to fall into actual fire. That's why you do something else with it and have her, I don't know, have some other sort of demise that doesn't involve your actor or your stunt person falling into a ring of fire. But, or you superimpose real fire with an actor. Like we're at the point now with advancements in technology, that's not that far-fetched, and that should be something that could easily be done, but instead they'd rather just do it in post. So that's really that's really one of the biggest things that stood out to me that I wasn't really too fond of is the CGI in the film, as well as the fact that it wasn't as action-packed as I would have liked, and some of the new crew I'm not too fond of. Like, there's this one guy who's a cocky bastard, really, who's a young buck who's got an attitude, and his whole thing is he flies around a drone, and like, other than shooting some guys with the drone in a scene that lasts 30 seconds before the drone is blown up, the guy doesn't really do anything. So he doesn't do anything to really make you warm up to him, let alone think that he's done enough to prove to Mike and Marcus that he belongs. And he's welcome to talk all the shit that he's been talking. I didn't really care for that character. I don't think they handled that character very well, and I think they really could have done a better job with that character, in terms of making him more likable or just giving him more to do, other than just being a guy who flies a drone around. Like, oh, what a badass. That's just me personally. I mean, Vanessa Hudgens, she kicked a lot more ass than he did. And he was the one that was talking the most shit. But anyway, I also I think it set itself up for more films and done it in a good way. I think having the new captain, I think works, but at the same time, like I said, I don't think they needed to do that. I like the actress, but we didn't need to kill off Joe Pantoliano's character. We could still have him going forward. That'd be like permanently killing off Nick Fury or something. You just be like, no, I'm not all for that, because Nick Fury is an important character in the Marvel universe. It's kind of the same sort of thing here, but either way, I'll give it a shot. If they do another one, I'll be there. I'll be there as long as Will Smith and Martin Lawrence are back and they're not in the background in their own movie franchise. I'll be there. I'll be there opening weekend or a week later, and I will definitely be looking forward to it. So yeah, this was one of my most anticipated films of this year, and for the most part, it didn't disappoint. I mean, there were moments and aspects of it that I personally feel could have been better, but it was honestly what I expected it to be. I expected it to be a fun, exciting, entertaining movie for the most part. Expected there to be the moments where what didn't quite click, because it's a sequel after all that happened 17 years after the second film in the franchise. So my expectations weren't too high. I wasn't expecting a great film. I wasn't expecting a masterpiece. I was expecting a fun movie, fun action film. And that's exactly what I got with this particular movie. So if you're a fan of the first two films and you're a fan of big, loud, over-the-top action movies, and you're getting a little bit tired of the Fast and Furious franchise and you want a little bit of a different flavor, definitely give this one a look. And yeah, thank you for watching my review of Bad Boys for Life. And as always, I'll see you later. See ya.